to the Free Kick Podcast. My name is Todd. Today I'm joined by Michael. How are you doing today, Michael?
I'm doing very well, Todd. Thank you for having me on your show.
No problem. It's always a blast whenever I get a chance to talk to Philadelphia Union fans, no matter where they come from. You know, it's that time of the season where, you know, the crazy rumors start. So we'll talk about all the latest Philadelphia Union rumors. But before we talk into them, why don't you tell everybody how you first became a fan of the Philadelphia Union, Michael?
I really kind of have a different history with soccer than I think a lot of Union fans. I never had anything against soccer, but I really didn't grow up playing it or having an infatuation with it. And back in 2015, a couple of friends of mine were going, we should get Union tickets. And I was kind of talked in that way. They were, and still are, pretty, cheap, and we were going to be in the River End. And it only took about a few games for me to be hooked in, and it just kept kind of going down the rabbit hole deeper and deeper, and getting really into the Union, and then the men's and women's national team, and looking over in Europe. But I like to say, my first love and strongest love is the Union, and it will always continue to be. And I'm proud to still be a season ticket holder, and this will be my 6th year in, and it's just kind of been consumed as my hobby now.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you there about that. I mean, for people that, maybe this is your first episode that's listening to this podcast and everything, I'm a Manchester United fan and everything. And so Manchester United and England, the national team, those are my two teams. And that's kind of how I got started with becoming a soccer fan and everything. But once I went to my first Union game this season, I was like, watching live soccer, nothing can beat that and everything. And now I say, I love Manchester United. I love the England national team, but it's like going to a game every single weekend, it seems like, nothing beats that. And yeah, I agree with you that the Union are my first love too. But I want to go back to a point that you made. Did you say you're a season ticket holder in the River End?
I was a season ticket holder in the River End. I want to say that was for 4 years, and now I moved out, and I'm right where the River Deck is now. So I didn't move too far out, and this will be my 2nd year there. So just kind of a different experience, I guess, wanting to be more analytical during the game and analyzing, and instead of the cheering, even though sometimes I do miss that.
Yeah, absolutely. I know myself speaking, I do love watching the game, and sometimes, I know you're sitting in the River and you're there to cheer on the team and everything and have your support to the team and everything. So there's times that you don't really get to see what's going on at all times. But, at the end of the day, as long as I'm watching live soccer, that's all I care about and everything. So I do get where you're coming from, maybe sitting up higher and you get a better angle of the whole stadium and everything. You can see, formations and how the team's playing and everything from a higher vantage point and everything. But what are some of your favorite moments from last season?
Oh, wow. So I don't know if anybody that is a Union fan would say otherwise, that the playoff game would be their number one. I think it just kind of has to be mentioned up there. And a quick funny story on that is I did go to that game, and I ended up on the River Deck, thinking the second half. And I'm watching with a close buddy of mine who's a bit older than me. He's got 20 years on me, in his 50s. And he and I are both watching, and as they make it then 3-2, and then they make it 3-3, and Marco Fabian makes the kick and own goal or goal or whatever anybody wants to call it, but earning his money's worth. We just run around crazy through the stadium. And one of my friends who I took to a couple of games, he loves the atmosphere, but he's more casual with soccer. He says what he said happened is it basically was almost like Dirty Dancing, where he almost just lifted me up in the air. We were just so overjoyed and everything with the goal, and then we were just going crazy. And I think it took a few days for me to get down from that high, because just the way of it being 2-0, 2-1, 3-1, and then to come back and win it. And once it was tied, I was pretty certain we were going to win, because just the Red Bulls had to have been thinking, it's happening all over again. And then that comes to one of the other memorable games was the Ilsinho game. for me this season was just, I think that really built onto the playoff game very well. It just kind of meshes very well now looking back. Even though Ilsinho didn't necessarily score in that game, I think once he came in and the way things were going, I think it just made it all happen again. And the atmosphere in both were electric. And to give you a final third one, I would say the Atlanta game, because I don't want to say something crazy like to say that I think they're our rivals, but I think everybody in the league holds Atlanta to this high regard. And Atlanta, they're on their ego, so they hold themselves in this high regard, Atlanta fans. And to go, hey, we don't have the budget you guys have. We don't maybe have the big names that you guys have. You guys are already like writing us off in little articles that are very error ridden. To beat them and then at that time be above them and have first place, even though it didn't end up that way, it really solidified that this team is not a joke. It's not going to be like other years where we're up top and then we start to crash and burn and we eke our ways into the playoffs. This is a team that really is special for us. So I would say those three games really encapsulated it.
The Atlanta game was very, very special. And like you said, we played against a team that, spend a lot of money, and they're always, it seems like ever since they first came into the league, they've always been at the top of the MLS. They're a team, I think a lot of Union fans want us to kind of model off of them. You spend big on these DPs and everything. And I'm not saying, that that's the way we should run it and everything, because I do think the Union do a good job at investing in the academy. And you see players like Auston, Trusty, Mark McKenzie, Brendan Aronson come through the academy, players that have contributed a lot over the last couple of years and everything. And so there's nothing wrong with, investing your money into the academies. But I do agree, you do want to see the Union, spend 5, 6, maybe a little bit more for a really, really decent DP and everything. And, it's still early in the offseason. We'll see if they go out there and spend crazy money in like New York Red Bulls or NYFC or Atlanta and everything. And the Ilsinho game that you brought up too, I agree. That was one of my games. I mean, nobody's going to forget about that game. That was a great comeback victory, and it was all due to Ilsinho. I was hoping that he would get that hat trick, but he'll take a brace and we'll take the win. We don't care how we got the win as long as we beat the Red Bulls, and that's exactly what we did in the playoff game. I mean, what else can be said about that? I mean, that's a game that nobody's going to forget about. That's a game that is just so memorable, and I say it all the time. Every single week I feel like I'm going back watching the highlights, because that's a feeling that I never want to forget.
Yeah, I feel that that's one of those where they did the encore presentation, and I didn't get to see it then, but if they were to be like, hey, $10 for a DVD of it, I would in a heartbeat do that, but maybe even more. Like, it's just something that really the season so perfectly of what, and the players that really were stepping up and everything. And I know some of them aren't there anymore that score, but like the questions with Fabian, Fafa and his struggles and the questions happening there, Alejandro Bedoya stepping up and being greater than ever for us, and then Elliott stepping up and retaking his claim as center back and the back and forth there. So it's just really such a interesting game of how it all panned out, and to one of our rivals, nonetheless, to do it that way, it was incredible. And after that, my buddy and I, we said, well, we're playing with house money now. We got the playoff win. We wanted the playoff win. We got that. Anything else is house money from here on. And they did an admirable job against Atlanta, especially missing some key pieces. But after that, like, who can complain about that season? It's one to remember, and hopefully it'll be the start of quite a stretch to remember.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. And, like I said earlier, I mean, this is just the start of the off season and everything, and just all the rumors and everything, like I mentioned earlier. We'll get to that. I'm going to hype it up, because, I mean, I'm so excited just reading all these rumors and everything. And I know I'm not one to get excited for rumors and everything, but really just the last year focusing on MLS a little bit more than European soccer and everything, I feel like you don't get too many decent rumors out there. I mean, I think you get a lot of bogus rumors and everything. Like, oh yeah, I don't believe that. But I feel like the rumors that we've got this year with the union and everything, I'm like, okay, I can see why they're saying this. You know, it seems like Ernst wants a lot of these young European players and everything. We saw it with Kai Wagner last season. We saw with Sergio Santos, he was a young player coming out of Brazil. I know he wasn't playing in Europe and everything, but it seems like Ernst has this mindset that he wants to sign young players. And that kind of brings me to my next question for you. What player were you surprised by the most last season? I mean, take that however you want. It could be a player that you thought was going to be terrible, but they performed well, or be it a player you thought was going to have a good season, but they had a bad season.
Yeah, I think it has to be Shabilko, because when we signed him, I went, okay, that's a fair enough signing. And that was the season before at the end, and he didn't play at all. I think he may have dressed once as a sub, but I'm not even sure of that. And then the season starts, and I remember I was at the signing at Dave & Buster's, and I say to my girlfriend, she goes, who's that? She found him to be one of the more handsome players. And I go, that's Kasper Shabilko. He'll probably be with the Steel most of the year. And I just really thought that, because we had Corey Berg, we had Sergio Santos up there. I couldn't see him taking a spot there, and he didn't really prove anything really yet. And it did start out that way, and then boom, it exploded, like just goals after goals when he was called upon. Kind of almost halfway through the season, it was incredible. So it was something that was amazing. I think maybe he was voted the player of the year, but I still think he may have been a bit forgotten because he didn't get to play down the stretch because of the foot, and now everybody's just hoping that that's an injury that in the past. But I think, I'm sure there's people who believed he would achieve this, but I can safely say I was not one of them. I thought it was just kind of surprising he was getting signed back again, but I was like, oh, it's a depth thing. But he definitely, it's one of Ernst's great signings. Like I said, he goes into these lower leagues and gets these players, and Kasper is maybe not necessarily a younger player, but he is still somebody that is in his prime, got him really at a great value for nothing, and he saw something. So I think it says a lot of Ernst in that, but it also says a lot of Kasper, because he came out of nowhere, and Lord knows we've had players that had opportunities in the past that I have a Jay Simpson jersey that haunts me, and it just never worked out there. So he had his opportunities, and then they passed, and then when they stepped up again, yeah, he had moments, but nothing like Kasper. So it says a lot for him to, when he got his moments, to hold on to him. And now I think you have to say he's the starting striker going into the season when everything healthy. I know there's a lot of, Corey's now back, and we have Sergio as well, but I don't know how if he's healthy, go against the guy who scored that many goals.
Yeah, I agree with you. And for everybody that's listening, sometime in February, I'll give my predictions and everything where I think the Union is going to finish. I'll give you my predictions where they're going to the playoffs, because yes, even with us only making one signing, I do believe that the Union are a playoff team, even though the season hasn't started yet, even though we haven't seen these guys start. So I'll give my predictions on where I think they're finished. I'll give my predictions on what I think the first lineup of the season is going to be and all that jazz. So look forward to that happening sometime in February. But yeah, I mean, how can you not go in next season starting Kasper? And he was so crucial last season for us, and it was a shame that he didn't get to play against NYFC the last game of the season. It was a shame we didn't get to see him against the Red Bulls, and even against Atlanta. There was thoughts out there maybe he'd be able to play against Atlanta, but I guess that ankle was just giving him problems and everything. And to his credit and everything, he's had a lot of injury problems and everything. And when I saw him get hurt in warmups and everything, I was like, man, this is not good. And I was like, what if he calls it quits now because he has another injury? And there's a player who the Union can't afford not to be there. And then we see later in the offseason that he comes out and says he's fully healthy, he's ready for the season to start. So I expect Kasper to just kick the ball rolling and pick up where he left off last season. And I think, to your point that you made, we spent a lot of money on Marco Fabian. He's a player who's had injury problems in the past and everything, and he's one of those players, who hasn't worked out. I mean, yeah, he gave us that great moment, and maybe some people think, oh yeah, he was worth the $2 million. And I mean, we we saw a glimpse of what he could offer, but him and Casper are both players that had injury problems, and Marco was at DP signing and everything, and he didn't perform like we wanted him to. But I do agree with you. Casper is a really, really good shout. And a lot of people, have been saying Kai Wagner. For myself personally, I'm not going to take the two obvious answers. I'm going to say Jack Elliott. He's a player that I was really, really surprised by, who stepped up really, really well this season. He cemented that number one center back spot. And no matter if it was Collin, Trusty, or McKenzie, I thought for the most part the defense looked solid this season. I know we gave up a lot of goals and everything, but if you look at it, most of those goals weren't coming down Elliott's side. And, that's a credit to Jack. There's a guy who was a late pick in the super draft coming out of West Virginia. Nobody thought he would be starting on an MLS team and everything. And it seems like every single year that he's been with the team, he's got better and better and better. And I'm really looking forward to seeing what Jack can do next season. Because, he came out with so many goal line clearances this year. He looked comfortable passing out of the back. And how many crucial goals did he score for us this season? 2 or 3 that can pop out of the top of my head.
And to your point with Elliott and to the back line in general, and this may be probably my most controversial statement. I don't know how you feel. I think this player is just a lightning rod with Harris. Is while he was very good offensively, defensively, he was a huge liability. And I think a lot of those goals were he did not track the runner, and then, Jack's covering his guy, and Auston or Marks normally had their guys or Collin, and the runner just killed us. So hopefully now the Venezuelan wizard that we have, it looks like his down break is he's pretty good defensively. I think that's going to really cement and our back line even more, because now they're not going to have to worry about that, because I think it was becoming pretty obvious at the end that, like, while Harris is very good offensively, I don't think he was the answer going forward as a CDM. He was just a huge liability. So I think next year, just even because of something like that, if our now Venezuelan CDM signing pans out, then we're I think going to be really golden with Jack going forward, because that's going to be one less thing you have to worry about.
Yeah, I agree with you. I'm looking forward to Jose Andres Martinez, a.k.a. El Brujo, the Wizard, the Sorcerer, his nickname. But speaking of players, so we know Jamiro Monteiro and Ilsinho are out of contract. We'll get to Jamiro a little bit later. But do you see Ilsinho coming back next season?
To play into the speculation, the fact that on New Year's Eve or on New Year's Day that the Union posted Happy New Year's and had Ilsinho pictured there, and they've been doing a lot of Ilsinho stuff, and I know Ilsinho loves it here. The fans love him. He's a fan favorite. He's one of my girlfriend's favorite. And everybody, it's just like whenever he comes on as a sub, as a super sub, it's like a standing ovation already. I think he would come back for the amount of money he was making this year, even if you want to give him a little bump. I would be totally fine with that. I think he really came in very much thinner this year, and I think that really helped him out. Not saying that his years in the past were bad, they weren't, but this year it was superb, and I think maybe the strength of the midfield helped him there as well. But I can't see a reason why you wouldn't re-sign him other than if Ernst doesn't think he has anything left in the tank. But I think, unlike him saying that with Harris, I think it's pretty clear, like, Ilsinho's got a lot to offer, especially on the offensive end, and I would re-sign him, because if you don't have him, I don't know who your sub is if you need a goal. Right now, you would have to pick up somebody else.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you. And it is promising that the team, like you said, on social media kept posting GIFs of Ilsinho. And I was at the end of the season, I wasn't that optimistic, but now I am, seeing them tease us and everything. So I got to imagine, something's possibly close and everything. So hopefully we hear something before training camp breaks out here in the next couple of weeks. But what do you make of the trades of Fafa Picault to FC Dallas for $375,000 and Auston Trusty to Colorado for $750,000?
So I've been getting a lot of flack from a couple of friends with the Trusty one, because I was a big Trusty supporter. I trust the Trusty, and so I've been getting a lot of flack with that. And that one seemed like it was time, but I also think it's a bit dangerous, and here's why. I think obviously there was stuff going behind the scenes because Auston seems like he really just wants to spill it all out right now, but somebody's telling him not to, but he's this close. Like there was something about him, he didn't think he was getting a fair shot at playing time. I can kind of see his point where if he made a few mistakes and then he was immediately in the doghouse. But to counter that, you have three really good and young center backs, and Mark stepped up and didn't make an error, which you said, oh, well, Auston has to step back in. And then you have a great veteran like Collin who's really there and I think really doing a good job mentoring the guys, even though I think he's a step slower and he worries me being the backup. And that's the one thing that worries me is not having the three young guys anymore. I think it was just something that he had to do for his career and something that really the union had to do to kind of solve the three-person center back issue. But when it comes down then to Fafa, what I think is interesting there is I think they're really looking that they don't think they can sign him next year. They think he's going to demand a lot of money, and they don't think they can sign him. I also think they're factoring in his poor first touch, which I love Fafa, but we have to admit he has a pretty bad first touch. But losing that speed is really, I think, going to be a problem, and that's one of the areas I don't think we have a fix for right now. I don't know who really uses the wingers right now. I guess you could use Santos as one of them, but you really don't have two true wingers, in my opinion, that can start and be MLS caliber starters. And so that one worries me a bit more than the Trusty one. The Trusty one just kind of hit more home because I really do think he could still have a very bright future.
Yeah, and I mean, to your point, talking about Ilsinho, Ilsinho was a good option coming off the bench, but so was Fafa, Picault and everything. And, credit to Jim, and Fafa too, Fafa, in my opinion, is more of a winger and not really a number 9 and everything. And to both of their credits, they tried it and everything, and Fafa gave his all and everything. And I'm going to miss Fafa for, hustling back on defense and then hustling right back up at the top of the field. Because how many strikers do you see, that are just going to sit on the top of the box and everything, not come back and play defense? And that is the complete opposite of Fafa. And so with Fafa getting a new chance with FC Dallas and he'll be able to play on the wing where he's more comfortable, I'm sure he's going to go ahead and kill it for FC Dallas. But I agree with you, Fafa is a player who probably, as much as he loved being in Philadelphia, he wants to be a starter. And I think he's a smart man, knows that his chances of starting in Philadelphia were numbered. And for a player who was out of contract, to get $375,000, I mean, that's a great, great deal by Ernst. And, you can invest that however you want. I mean, if you want to look at it, that $375,000, it practically paid for all of the Jose Andres Martinez deal, and we'll get to that a little bit later. And then Auston Trusty, I agree. There's a guy who just is so young and talented. You can see the talent there and everything, but I think once he got thrown into the doghouse, that didn't sit right with him and everything. You saw those quotes out in the media and everything talking about, oh, you don't know the behind the scenes and all this other jazz and everything. So, I mean, it does make you wonder, okay, what exactly happened to set Auston this much off? And, I get it. A kid coming through the academy, he's from the Philadelphia area and everything, knows nothing else. And then all of a sudden you go to the bench and you don't see any more action the rest of the season. So I do get, his frustration and everything, but, you're a professional athlete. If you lose your spot, you got to work 10 times harder to reclaim your spot and everything. And I do think that Jack Elliott and Mark McKenzie were the better center back partnership and everything. And I'm just happy we got something for Auston Trusty with him having an option for the 2020 season. But I know Auston was looking for a new contract. And unfortunately, I guess for him, he wasn't able to get that with Philadelphia. But now he gets a brand new chance out in Colorado. I want to move on to our signings that we made so far. So I'll start with Jose Andres Martinez, a.k.a. El Brujo. The Union have paid a reported transfer fee of $325,000 to Zelaya FC, his club in Venezuela. El Brujo has signed a 2-year deal with a 3rd-year option. Like you said, he can play as a number 6, center defensive midfielder, or he can play as a right back, according to transfermarket.com. What are your thoughts on this transfer?
What I really like, and it shows the brilliance of Tanner throughout all these deals, is he doesn't get captured into like these long-term deals like DC United did with Wayne Rooney, like what was it, like 5 years, and that didn't happen. He's very smart of knowing, okay, this, like with Fabian, for example, okay, he's an injury-prone player, so we'll give him a year, and then we'll have a bunch of options. It didn't work out, and so we're not hung up on the money scale of that. To have it with El Brujo, to have 2 years and then an option, I think is smart, because I do think it's going to work out, but just in case it doesn't, you're only on the hook for 2 years. That being said, from what I've heard of him, I'll admit I don't watch the Venezuelan league at all, but from what I've heard of him, he seems like he's a very hardworking player, very physical. He seems to immediately be all in Philadelphia, which is great, because I do like using South America players as this is a stepping stone to them possibly to go to a big European club or just a big European league. But he seems to be all in with Philadelphia right now. He's focused on being here. And the fact that he was getting calls up or to Venezuela or getting rumored to be getting close to calls up to Venezuela, I know he hasn't been capped yet, I think says a lot. So I think it's a very good signing, especially with the money that Ernst has once again used. We're not known for transfer fees, and this is not a huge amount of money, even in MLS terms. But I think he's really going for, these players. And I saw comments like, oh, well, he's, you can correct me if I'm wrong, I think he's 25 or 26. He's not really a young prospect. But I go, well, that's why you're getting him at this cheaper of a price. And that's kind of the payoff, and that's what we have to deal with. But still, at that point, him being in his prime, I think it's going to work out wonderfully. And I think it really is going to fill a lot of the gaps that Harris had on defense. And I think that's really going to make us stronger defensively. So I think it's a great signing from without seeing any of him other than a few highlights.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't think anybody watches Venezuelan soccer. I mean, we barely can find any highlights on this guy. So, I mean, what we saw from him was just a few highlights and everything, because you're never going to see lowlights. So anything else you want to try to find and everything, you're not going to find it. The only way you could see this guy play is if you actually go to Venezuela and scout him and everything. So we just got to trust that the scouts and Ernst know what they're doing with him. And, I mean, Ernst hasn't given any of us a reason not to trust him. And I trust Ernst 100%. He's a player who's 25 years old. You're correct in that. He's a guy who's close to getting caught up to the Venezuelan national team, and that's going to give him even more motivation to do well with the Union. I think, there's a player who's ambitious to play for the national team. There's a guy who has everything to play for with the Union. There's a guy who I think can take his career to the next step up and maybe become a regular for the national team. And I'm just really, really happy we didn't pay an arm and a leg for him, which is always a good thing because, like you said, the Union don't play crazy transfer fees and everything, and this is certainly not a transfer that's breaking the bank. So, I mean, if you want to play devil's advocate, if this doesn't work out, you didn't spend a ton of money on him. So, I'm happy with the deal and everything, and I think he's going to be a very, very promising piece for us next season. But the other player that we signed, or I should say re-signed, was Aurelien Collin for a one-year deal. What are your thoughts on this?
So I like it and I don't like it. I like it for what I've seen during games. Sometimes I'll look down at the players warming up, and Aurelien just always caught my eye because he was so into the game. He was yelling out instructions. I think this guy's going to be a good coach when he retires. He seems to have a great bond with the players, especially the defensive players. So to keep him in the locker room with what is still a pretty young back line. Yeah, they've gone through a few years now, but still pretty young. To have that veteran presence, I think is great. The downside is I do think he will get some playing time, and he didn't look awful, but there has been a few times where he looked like he was just lost a step and a bit too slow for some of the strikers and wing players out there, and that just worries me, to be honest. And maybe it's because we got spoiled with having three young center backs the past 3 years, but now having to move forward from that. Yeah, I think he's a good enough backup, but if Mark or Jack gets hurt and it's a long term, I think we may feel the benefits of that. I don't think it's going to be like Gooch a few years ago where he's running on maybe a half of a good knee. But it's still, I think going to be a bit worrisome if you have to use them long-term. Short-term, I think is fine. A game or two, I think will be fine. But outside of that, I would be a little worried.
Yeah, I mean, I do get that concern from a lot of fans and everything, and I don't think we're going to be seeing Collin other than 5 to 7 times this season. And granted, if we make a deep run in the U.S. Open Cup, then I expect to see him play every Open Cup game and everything. And bearing no injuries, I can't see him playing in the league more than 5 to 7 times. And the thing that excites me about Collin is, he's a veteran of MLS, and I get it that a lot of people, say, oh, I mean, he's worrying in the back, he makes reckless mistakes and everything. He's definitely not as fast as he once was, but, just being a veteran and everything, he's always thinking 2 steps ahead, and that's what you got to love about veterans. And, like I said, with bringing in El Brujo, him and Collin can both speak Spanish, and granted you have translators and everything, but like I said last episode, there's nothing you can't, like, players feel more comfortable talking to players as opposed to talking to a translator. They can relate with the players and not so much the translators. And so I know a lot of people have argued that point on Twitter and said, oh, then why are you paying him to be a translator and everything? Go and make him a coach or something. But I think, he still has something to offer. And like you said, as long as he's not playing a full season and everything, it's not a terrible signing. But I want to move on to the rumors. And the first rumor that I'm going to bring up is Jamiro Monteiro. So last week, Jamiro's club, FC Metz, they announced in a video that them and the union are still negotiating a deal to secure a permanent deal for Jamiro, but we haven't heard any news since. And in my opinion, I think the transfer fee would be between 2 to 3 million, and a salary would be around the same thing. So, in your opinion, do you see the union and FC Metz getting a deal done for Jamiro Monteiro?
So I think so, because I don't think he has a future at FC Metz. As far as I know, he hasn't gotten any playing time since his loan ended. And I looked that up, I think a few days ago, and I didn't see any playing time there. So he's not getting any playing time there. You can basically, if you're FC Metz, get back what you paid for him. So wash it clean, and then basically you would be paying him the salary that you were paying Marco Fabian, maybe a little bit more, maybe a little bit less. He's not a big name, not nearly as big a name as Fabian was, but what he brought to the team last year, his intensity, his work rate, the goals he scored, just really being an outstanding midfielder. I think you could make an argument. Last year he was the most valuable player. I think Casper deserved it, and I think he is, but I think you can make an easy argument that Monteiro is right up there. And if he wanted, I wouldn't have had any argument. And I just think that Ernst really likes him. Ernst, I don't think is giving up. And I think part of this, getting this allocation money and everything, maybe is to get ready for a move. Or maybe Ernst is now hopefully in Sugarman's ear saying, listen, I've been doing this on a shoestring budget, but, give me a transfer fee that really is still kind of shoestring, even in MLS. And you saw what this guy can do for us. We can be this much better when we now have, we have the CDM I want in place, because I don't think Tanner was a big fan of Hair. So he has a CDM. He has now, if Monteiro comes back, he has Monteiro. He still has Bedoya, who's great. Aronson. You got what looks like a really good midfield, and I think that would be really a key signing. And if he doesn't get signed in the January transfer window, I just think it's going to be, I guess, the summer window somewhere, because I just don't know where he's going to end up. He doesn't seem to be getting playing time at Metz. So I think that's a key factor of why these negotiations opened up again. And if I'm the union, I'm fine with those terms, if those are the terms, and I would do it in a heartbeat.
Yeah, I mean, there's no denying that Jamiro was one of the best players. And, it's a shame that, he didn't make it to the semifinal or to the finals for the Philadelphia Union's Player of the Year voting and everything. I mean, everybody loves goals and everybody loves skills. So, I mean, it's no surprise to see Ilsinho and Casper in the final and everything. But I think, Monteiro was just so great for us last season. Just so many times he was winning back the ball and everything. So many times, he was under pressure and he wasn't afraid to do a skill move here or there and get himself out of trouble. bubble. He was so slick with his passing, in my opinion. He's a player who I would love back and everything. But, you're seeing more rumors that the Union are talking to other teams with other midfielders, and now that leads me to this next player I'm going to bring up. We saw the rumors today, January 6th, that Matej Oravec, who, according to Paolo Pavlovsky, the Union are interested in the 21-year-old Slovakian defensive midfielder. Matej, according to transfermarket.com, he can play as a center back and a right back. Matej has a contract that runs until June 30th of 2022. And in my opinion, I would guess his club would ask anywhere between $500,000 to $1 million just because the player arrived this year. And then looking at his playing this year, his games, he played in 16 out of his 18 games this year for his club. He's played in the Champions League and the Europa League qualifier, so that's always a plus because everybody wants to play in the Champions League. And then in 2018, I found out that he was nominated for the Golden Boy Award in 2018, which is given to the best young footballer. So what are your thoughts on this rumor?
I think it's typical Tanner going for a young player that's kind of off the radar, I think, for most teams. And he said he was going to go over to Europe and scout, and that, going to Slovakia doesn't surprise me. Going like he did with Wagner, going to lower tiers of Germany, he's not a guy that's, I'm going over to scout in Europe and he's going to the Premier League and La Liga. That's not his style, and he knows that's what we can't do. The 500,000 to $1 million, that would be interesting. If that were to happen, that would make me think that then Monteiro would probably not happen. Just like you're saying, it seems like, another option. If you get him maybe for $500,000, then or maybe 750,000, then maybe you could still get Monteiro. But once I think the $1 million mark hits, I think Sugarman's going to get a little worried about paying more. But I think it will be interesting. It would be interesting of him or El Brujo, who would be the CDM, who would be the right back. I'm assuming someone's taking Ray's spot there from these rumors. So it'll be interesting to see up there. But I like the going for another young player. I like that he has these accolades there. And I know some people get worried, oh, well, he's only been playing in this lower league of Slovakia. Like, who knows how good he is? It's like, well, that's kind of what we have to do. We're not going to get. Yeah, I don't want to get EPL rejects or Liga rejects. I want to get players that can be prospects.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, you want to get young players and everything, but you don't want to get young players just for the sake of it. You want to get young players that are going to, contribute and have a bright future and everything. And I think with Matej, and before I continue talking about him, I just want to apologize if I'm saying his name wrong. Once the Union sign him, then I'll learn how to say his name proper. But yeah, he's 21 years old, and just to see a player that's played in the Europa League, played in the Champions League, and I know he hasn't played in the full competition for the Champions League. He's only played in the qualifiers, but still to get that experience, I mean, that's as high a soccer as you can get. And so to see a player that was nominated for the Golden Boy Award in 2018, I'm really, really excited by that. And for a player that's versatile, I love a versatile player, because if you have injuries, then, I can slot player A into player B spot and vice versa and everything. So for a player that can play 3 different positions, that's very, very promising. And like you said, there's a player along with El Brujo who can also play right back that's going to challenge Ray Gaddis for that right back spot, which, you want to see competition, because that's what brings the best out of every single player in your team. There's nothing wrong with having competition. And, I think Ray would welcome that competition.
Yeah, and just to your point about Champions League qualifiers, I am a proud Celtic supporter as my European club, and we had to have gone through these Champions League qualifiers, and Celtic is a pretty big name. I will not stand here and say that, that they're have the best quality anymore, but they struggle to get to the Champions League, but the qualifiers mean so much to them. They're playing their best players, and I know every club is. So yeah, it isn't necessarily the Champions League, and people will say, oh well, it was only the qualifiers. For those clubs, those qualifiers mean a heck of a lot, and you're absolutely right. So for him to get that exposure, it isn't like just like an Open Cup match or something where they didn't care. That they definitely cared, and they definitely trusted him in that.
Yep, absolutely. And then the last player that we've been linked with so far this season is Vodháněl. who, according to iSports CZ over in Czech Republic, the Union are interested in signing the 22-year-old Jan Vodháněl. He currently plays for Czech side Bohemians 1905, and his contract with them runs until December 31st, 2021. Jan plays as a left winger / left midfielder, but there are thoughts that he could play on the left side of the diamond in the 4-4-2 that the Union play. According to a new report, though, from iSports CZ, Bohemians rejected the first bid from the Union, but Jan is hopeful another bid comes as he wants to play for the Union. He called MLS his quote-unquote dream. What are your thoughts on this?
I just have a follow-up question. Do we know how much the transfer amount was? I'm guessing we don't.
According to the first report, Bohemians, they wanted $1 million for him. So again, kind of like Matej or Oravec, kind of in the same ballpark.
Another young player, a guy who wants to be here. And as I said earlier in this interview, like, we need wingers, and to have that option, a guy who can fit in a diamond, I think that'd be great. We had success with a Czech a few years ago with Picault, so I don't think there's any reason to question the quality of that league. And I think $1 million this day and age, you go for it and you sign him. So him wanting to do that, maybe it'll buck it down a bit, and his club will go, okay, we'll do it for $800,000 or something. But as the negotiations progress, I hope we get him. I think that would be another great signing. I really like focus on youth here from Europe and South America, and then getting players that have played in the MLS like Aurelien as the veterans to kind of help these guys out. I like that kind of mixture. So you have guys who have that MLS experience that can better and give leadership to these guys who have incredible talent. And let's be honest, these guys could be right back over in Europe at a bigger club if they do well here. But I think it would be a great move, I think, for all parties. And so I think it would be a great one. In the rank like the ones going on right now, I would say Monteiro would still be my top priority, but then after that, I would really focus on getting that winger. I think he would be a good fit from what I know, which is not much, but from what I know of him, I think it would work out.
Yeah, and the Union, they've shown that they're going away from using wingers and everything. But like you said, I mean, you do need a player that can come off the bench and everything. And maybe Jan, if he really can play in that number 8 role, play on the left side of the diamond where Jamiro was playing, which means Jamiro wouldn't come back. I'm okay with that. If you can sign both of these young players for $1 million and not pay the $2 to $3 million for Jamiro, that's fine. You get 2 young promising players instead of 1, and everybody would love to get Jamiro back, which I'm all for it. But if you can get 2 promising players and then you can spend more money on a number 10 or maybe another striker, I'm all for that. But one last question, Michael, before I let you go. What does your typical match day look like for you?
Oh, that's a great question, and thank you for having me on. This has been a lot of fun. The typical match day, it's interesting. So when the schedule came out, I sent the schedule to 2 friends of mine, and they got their game in. One got 6, and then one chose 4. And then I asked a couple others, one NYCFC fan, and he's like, yeah, I'll do that game with you. Despite being an NYCFC fan, he is a good guy. And then I kind of go through my list with others, and the guy that does the partial tickets, I'll ask them to do the home opener. So then I have a list of people I'm going with. My girlfriend gets away easily. She might be only going to like 3. And so it depends on that, but usually I like to get, we meet together at a meetup point. We drive up together. I like to get there early. I like to either tailgate if I'm with one buddy. We do like to smoke a cigar every now and then, so we'll do a cigar before and a cigar after. And I like to kind of walk in early, kind of get my I'm a fan of the pizza cone. I'll get that and just kind of get ready, check the lineup an hour before. So I'm talking to people about that, but then we usually end up, if we don't stay in our seats And if my buddy's there with his partial package, we'll end up on the river deck and we'll watch the game there. And then afterwards, we're either in the financial suite waiting for traffic to die down or down in the parking lot smoking cigars waiting for traffic to die down. But I definitely try to make it a full kind of afternoon, evening experience. It's definitely not what is typical, I guess, with European matches, because just most of them don't drive and they take the rails over. And I know drinking is prohibited in most of the big time stadiums there, so they do it afterwards. And unfortunately, Chester doesn't have a lot of areas around there except for the new brewery. But I do try to make it feel kind of as authentic to that as possible to get that true experience. And to me, it just makes it so much more fun.
Yeah, I agree with you, and I thank you for sharing your experience. I'm always interested to see what fans do before a game, leading up to the game and everything. So it's always fun hearing how everybody's a little bit different. But, at the end of the day, we all find our way into the stadium supporting the boys in blue. But I know I said one more question. Last question, though. Where can people find you on social media?
Yeah, so on social media, I'm at, I think, MVS Union. A lot of it is just me either retweeting. It's almost all soccer, so it's me either retweeting one of the European clubs I follow, or mainly Union, and talking about that. And that's, I guess, kind of my main spot. I'm also on Michael Stewart, using my middle name for Facebook, where I will also just kind of post soccer stuff. So yeah, my social media, especially Twitter, I know a lot of people use it as a great news source. I do too, but just for soccer. It's kind of a release. It's kind of a relaxation. So yeah, absolutely. If anybody wants to follow, feel free. You probably won't get much out of it, but I'm down to always talk soccer, especially the Philadelphia Union.
Yeah, thank you so much. And if you guys aren't following us on social media, you can follow the podcast by searching Free Kick Pod on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. And you can find us on any social media platform by searching The Free Kick Podcast. And if that doesn't come up, then you can just type in The Free Kick Podcast, Todd Lewis, and you'll be able to find me that way. But thank you so much, Michael, for coming on. I had a blast talking about the Union with you. And even though, the season's still about a month and a half away, it feels like it's right around the corner. And I can't wait to cheer on the boys in blue with you.
Yeah, it's, the way last season ended, how can you not be excited for this season? And I think, I just can't wait for that first game, even the away game in Dallas. It's going to be like Christmas Day.
Absolutely. And, I have nothing else to say. No, we're just going to go off on what Michael said, because with that said, my name is Todd, and this is the Free Kick Podcast.